Ladies and gentlemen, there is a truth that many of us sense but rarely dare to act upon. You cannot heal if you keep hiding. You cannot free yourself from what hurts as long as you pretend it doesn't exist. Healing demands honesty, presence, and courage. The courage to meet yourself without masks, without distractions, without running from the very wounds that shape your life from the shadows. Hiding feels safe. It feels familiar. It feels like protection. But hiding is not the absence of pain. It is the quiet multiplication of it. What you bury does not disappear. It roots itself deeper. What you avoid does not weaken. It strengthens in silence. Every unspoken hurt, every unacknowledged fear, every unresolved memory becomes another stone in the wall that blocks your growth, your peace, and your potential. Healing begins the moment you turn toward the very thing you've been avoiding. It begins the moment you admit, even silently to yourself, I am not okay, and that's okay to acknowledge. This is not a confession of weakness. It is an act of immense strength. To face your emotional wounds is to reclaim your power from them. To stop hiding is to stop surrendering control to the past. Many people carry their pain like a secret weight, believing that showing it means being vulnerable to judgment or rejection. But hiding your wounds does not prevent judgment, it prevents connection. It prevents others from seeing the real you, and it prevents you from experiencing the support and understanding you deserve. Healing is not a solitary punishment. It is a shared human experience. But no one can help you with the truth you refuse to reveal, not even to yourself. When you stop hiding, you stop pretending. You stop performing strength and start cultivating it. You stop numbing your emotions and start listening to them. You stop suppressing your story and start rewriting it. Healing is not about erasing the past, it is about transforming your relationship with it. It is about standing in your truth without collapsing under it. The moment you face your pain, it begins to shift. It may feel heavy at first. Feelings you buried long ago may rise to the surface. But these emotions are not returning to punish you. They are returning to be released. The discomfort you feel is the doorway to your freedom. Pain becomes more manageable when it is named, felt, and understood. When you face what hurts, you take away its power to control you from the dark. You cannot heal by pretending everything is fine. You cannot heal by distracting yourself endlessly. You cannot heal by staying busy enough to avoid your own thoughts. Healing requires stillness. Healing requires presence. Healing requires the willingness to sit with the parts of you that you've silenced for too long. Only when the inner noise settles do you begin to hear what your pain has been trying to tell you all along. Stop hiding behind the belief that you have to be strong all the time. Real strength is not the absence of struggle, it is the readiness to face that struggle with honesty. It is looking at your scars and realizing they are proof of your survival, not your shame. It is choosing to confront the truth even when it shakes you, because the truth is the only foundation on which real healing can be built. You deserve a life that is not shaped by the wounds you refuse to face. You deserve peace that doesn't depend on avoidance. You deserve relationships that are rooted in authenticity. You deserve the freedom that comes from no longer running from yourself. But to reach that freedom, you must first stop hiding. Turn toward what hurts with compassion. Listen to what your pain is asking you to understand. Allow yourself to be vulnerable with your own heart. Healing is not something that happens to you. It is something you actively participate in. And the first step, the most powerful step, is choosing no longer to hide from the truth of who you are and what you've been through. You can heal. You will heal. But only when you stop hiding. Self-honesty is the first form of courage, because it demands that we meet ourselves without the armor we usually present to the world. Many people imagine courage as something external, an act of boldness, a willingness to confront danger, or a readiness to fight for what is right. But the deepest and most transformative courage is the ability to sit alone with the truth of who we are, without disguises, without excuses, without the convenient stories we craft to protect our image. Facing the world is often easier than facing the self, because the world challenges only what you do, while self-honesty challenges who you are. Self-honesty requires a willingness to observe your thoughts, emotions, habits, and choices with a clear mind and an open heart. It is an inner agreement to stop running from the parts of yourself you find uncomfortable or inconvenient. Most people avoid this confrontation because it exposes contradictions. It asks you to acknowledge your fears, insecurities, harmful patterns, and unresolved pain. It forces you to look at the gap between who you pretend to be and who you actually are. This level of honesty can feel like standing naked in front of your own judgment. Yet it is precisely this vulnerability that makes self-honesty courageous. When you begin to practice self-honesty, you realize how often you hide behind explanations that make you feel safe. You might say you are too busy to pursue something your heart desires, when the deeper truth is that you are afraid to fail. You might pretend that certain relationships do not hurt you, when the truth is that you fear being alone. You may claim that you are content with your current life, when the truth is that you have stopped challenging yourself, because comfort feels easier than growth. These small deceptions accumulate until they form a barrier between you and your potential. Removing that barrier starts with the bravery to say, "This is the truth I have been avoiding." Self-honesty also means acknowledging your strengths without downplaying them. Many people believe that humility is the dismissal of their own abilities, but real humility is the accurate recognition of both strengths and weaknesses. Courage is not only admitting what is broken, it is also accepting what is powerful within you. If you cannot see your potential clearly, you cannot use it fully. Self-honesty illuminates both the light and the shadow, allowing you to walk forward with a balanced sense of who you are. One of the most challenging aspects of self-honesty is recognizing when you are the cause of your own suffering. It is easier to blame circumstances, other people, or past events than to accept that your choices, reactions, and interpretations also play a part. But without this acknowledgement, you remain powerless. Taking responsibility does not mean absorbing blame. It means reclaiming the ability to change. You cannot rewrite your past, but you can reshape your future through the truths you are willing to face in the present moment. Self-honesty is also deeply connected to emotional awareness. Many people suppress their feelings because they fear the intensity of their own inner experience. They push down sadness, anger, disappointment, or longing in an attempt to appear stable or strong. But strength is not the absence of emotion. Strength is the willingness to feel without drowning. When you allow yourself to recognize what you truly feel, you gain clarity about what needs attention, healing, or transformation. Ignoring emotions does not make them disappear. It merely drives them into the unconscious, where they continue to influence behavior in ways you do not understand. Courage begins when you stop hiding from what your heart is trying to tell you. Self-honesty also reveals the patterns you repeat without noticing. Every person lives according to a set of beliefs formed from past experiences, cultural influences, and personal fears. Some of these beliefs serve you, while others restrict you. When you observe your actions without justification, you begin to see where you are acting from habit rather than intention, where you are settling rather than striving, where you are resisting change because it threatens the familiar. This awareness becomes the foundation for growth. You cannot change what you cannot see, and you cannot see anything clearly until you are willing to be honest with yourself. Practicing self-honesty is not a single moment but a continuous discipline. It is the daily act of checking in with your thoughts and motives, questioning your assumptions, and choosing truth over comfort. It often feels difficult because it challenges your self-image, but it also liberates you because the truth frees energy that was previously spent maintaining illusions. When you are honest with yourself, you no longer need to pretend. You no longer need to construct a facade. You no longer waste time arguing with reality. You become aligned with your deeper nature, and alignment creates strength, stability, and inner peace. Self-honesty lays the foundation for all meaningful growth. Without it, discipline collapses into self-deception, goals lose direction, relationships become fragile, and healing remains incomplete. With it, every step you take becomes more deliberate, authentic, and empowered. Avoidance strengthens suffering because every time you turn away from what hurts, you teach your mind that the pain is too powerful to face. Instead of resolving the discomfort, avoidance multiplies it. the fear grows, the anxiety deepens, and the unresolved emotion becomes heavier with time. Pain does not dissolve simply because you pretend it is not there. It settles into the spaces you leave unexamined and influences your decisions from the shadows. Avoidance may feel like protection in the moment, but in reality it is a slow erosion of inner strength. When you avoid something, whether it is a difficult conversation, a painful memory, an uncomfortable truth, or an unmet need, you grant it more authority over your life. The mind interprets avoidance as confirmation that the avoided object is dangerous. So the next time you encounter the same situation, your fear response becomes stronger. What could have been a manageable discomfort transforms into a powerful emotional barrier. Avoidance feeds the very thing you want to escape. By giving it your silence, your fear, and your energy, avoidance also traps you in cycles of temporary relief. In the moment when you step away from what feels uncomfortable, you experience a brief sense of ease. This relief acts like a reward for avoidance, reinforcing the behavior. Your mind learns that avoiding is the quickest way to reduce stress, so it uses the same strategy again. Over time, this habit becomes automatic. You stop facing your challenges, not because they are too difficult, but because your mind has become conditioned to run from them. But the relief that avoidance provides is deceptive. It hides the fact that the underlying problem is growing. Unaddressed pain does not remain passive. It becomes more complex. It starts influencing your mood, your relationships, your confidence, and even your sense of identity. You may begin to see yourself as someone incapable of dealing with certain emotions or experiences. You may feel trapped by situations that could have been resolved if faced early. The suffering expands, not because the original wound grows, but because the fear surrounding it becomes stronger than the wound itself. Avoidance transforms discomfort into suffering by making the mind more afraid, more reactive, and more fragile. Avoidance also creates emotional tension within the body. When you suppress feelings like sadness, anger, fear, or disappointment, your body continues to hold the energy of those emotions. They manifest as tightness, restlessness, fatigue, or irritability. You may find yourself snapping at people, withdrawing, or feeling anxious without knowing why. The body keeps the score of what the mind refuses to acknowledge. Avoidance keeps the nervous system in a state of low-level distress, constantly alert, constantly bracing for a threat that remains unresolved. In relationships, avoidance becomes a silent destroyer. Avoiding difficult conversations leads to misunderstandings, resentment, and emotional distance. Instead of addressing problems openly, people walk on eggshells, hoping time will fix what honesty could resolve. But without communication, small issues accumulate until they become too heavy to ignore. Avoidance harms not just the individual, but also the connection between individuals, weakening trust and intimacy over time. Avoidance also hinders personal growth. Every challenge contains a lesson, and every discomfort contains potential for growth. When you avoid these experiences, you deprive yourself of the opportunity to expand your resilience, deepen your understanding, and build emotional strength. Growth requires stepping into discomfort with awareness, but avoidance blocks this process, keeping you stuck in familiar patterns even when they no longer serve you. You remain in the same emotional place because you never push past the barrier that avoidance erects. Another consequence of avoidance is the distortion of reality. When you refuse to face something, your mind begins to create exaggerated stories about it. You start imagining worst-case scenarios and predicting outcomes that may never occur. The unknown becomes a canvas for fear, and the longer you avoid it, the more frightening it seems. Facing reality often reveals that the situation is less overwhelming than your imagination has made it. But avoidance prevents you from discovering this truth. Avoidance strengthens suffering because it prevents closure. Healing depends on engagement, on turning toward your pain rather than away from it. When you confront a difficult emotion, you allow it to move, to change, to express, and eventually to resolve. But when you deny it expression, it becomes stagnant. Suffering deepens not because you are weak, but because you have been taught to hide from your own experience. The act of facing what hurts is not a punishment, it is the beginning of liberation. Awareness transforms pain into wisdom because when you bring conscious attention to your experiences, you create space between the emotion and your reaction. In that space, understanding becomes possible. Pain, when left unexamined, is just an overwhelming force that distorts perception, fuels fear, and shapes behavior in ways you may not fully understand. But when you observe it with clarity, without rushing to escape or suppress it, pain reveals its origins, its lessons, and the deeper truths it carries. Awareness does not remove pain instantly. It changes your relationship with it. Instead of being consumed by what hurts, you begin to see the structure behind the suffering. Pain often comes from resistance, the gap between what you wish life to be and what it actually is. When you are unaware of this gap, pain feels like a personal failure or an attack from the world. But awareness shows you that pain is a natural signal, a messenger indicating where you are growing, where you have unresolved wounds, or where your expectations no longer match reality. By paying attention to this signal, you gain insight into your patterns, your triggers, and the stories you have been telling yourself. This insight is the beginning of wisdom. Awareness also dissolves the automatic reactions that often make pain worse. When you are unaware, pain turns into anger, self-blame, avoidance, or hopelessness without your realizing how or why. You react instead of respond. But when awareness is present, you can feel the emotion rise in your body, notice the thoughts that accompany, and choose your next action consciously. This shift from reactivity to intentionality is a profound form of wisdom. You no longer become the emotion, you witness it, and by witnessing it, you gain control over how it influences your life. Pain becomes wisdom when awareness uncovers the deeper meaning behind an experience. Many painful moments have roots that stretch back further than the moment itself. A harsh word from someone may hurt more because it echoes an old insecurity. A failure may feel devastating because it touches a fear of inadequacy formed years before. Without awareness, pain feels disproportionate and confusing. But with awareness, you begin to understand that current emotions are often connected to long-standing wounds. This understanding allows you to heal the origin, not just the symptom. Recognizing these connections transforms pain into insight and eventually into personal evolution. Awareness also teaches you that emotions are temporary. One reason pain feels unbearable is the belief that it is permanent. When you lack awareness, you become entangled in the intensity of the moment, believing that the emotion defines you. But when you observe your feelings with mindful attention, you notice how they rise, peak, and fall like waves. You see their impermanence firsthand. This realization creates inner stability. It is wisdom born from direct experience rather than theory. You understand that you can endure discomfort because it will pass, and this knowledge reduces fear and resistance. Awareness transforms pain into wisdom by shifting your perspective. When you step back and observe your struggles, you become less identified with them. You begin to see yourself not as someone broken by pain, but as someone learning through it. This shift allows you to approach challenges with curiosity instead of judgment. You start asking questions: what is this emotion trying to show me? Where is it coming from? What belief is being challenged right now? These questions turn pain into a guide rather than an enemy. Wisdom grows from asking the right questions, and awareness is what makes those questions possible. Another dimension of awareness is compassion. When you are conscious of your inner experience, you begin to understand the complexity of your emotions. You see how they arise from fear, hope, past wounds, and unmet needs. This understanding naturally cultivates compassion for yourself. Instead of criticizing your pain or shaming yourself for experiencing it, you learn to hold it gently. This compassion softens the intensity of suffering and opens space for healing. Wisdom is not only knowledge, it is the ability to approach your own pain with kindness, recognizing that suffering is a universal part of the human experience. Awareness also reveals the choices available in moments of difficulty. Pain often narrows your perspective, making it seem as though you have no options. But when awareness is present, you see multiple paths. You can pause instead of react, reflect instead of escape, communicate instead of withdraw. You begin to understand the power you have in shaping your inner world. This understanding is wisdom in action. It gives you agency where you once felt helpless. Ultimately, awareness transforms pain into wisdom because it turns experience into understanding. Without awareness, pain is just suffering. With awareness, pain becomes a teacher. It shows you where you need to grow, what you need to release, and who you have the potential to become. Responsibility is liberation, because taking ownership of your actions, emotions, and choices frees you from the illusion that your life is controlled by forces outside yourself. Many people fear responsibility because they associate it with blame, pressure, or fault. But true responsibility is not about punishment, it is about reclaiming power. When you accept responsibility, you acknowledge that your responses, your decisions, and your direction are within your influence. This recognition opens a path toward freedom because it removes the helplessness that keeps you stuck. Responsibility liberates you from the belief that circumstances alone dictate your life. While it is true that you cannot control everything that happens to you, you can always control how you interpret and respond to those events. When you take responsibility for your reactions, you take ownership of your inner world. You stop waiting for life to change and start becoming the agent of that change. This shift transforms passive suffering into active self-determination. You begin to understand that while external situations may limit you, they do not define you. What defines you is the way you meet those situations. Accepting responsibility also liberates you from dependency on others for your sense of stability or happiness. When you blame others for your emotional state, you hand them the authority over your peace. You rely on their actions, words, or approval to feel secure. But when you take responsibility for your emotions, you reclaim that authority. You learn to regulate your inner experience, to understand your triggers, and to respond with awareness. This independence is not isolation, it is emotional maturity. It frees you from the constant ups and downs created by external validation or circumstances. Responsibility frees you from repeating old patterns. Many people find themselves trapped in cycles of behavior that cause pain or dissatisfaction, yet they believe the cycle is unchangeable. But when you take responsibility, you acknowledge the role your choices play in sustaining those patterns. This recognition may feel uncomfortable at first because it removes excuses and exposes inconsistencies. Yet it is precisely this discomfort that leads to liberation. You realize that if your choices contribute to the pattern, then new choices can break it. Responsibility replaces resignation with possibility. Taking responsibility also liberates you from the fear of failure. When you stop blaming external factors for your outcomes, you begin to see failure not as a threat, but as feedback. You understand that mistakes are part of growth, and that taking ownership of them gives you the clarity to learn and improve. This mindset frees you from perfectionism and from the paralysis that comes from fearing the judgment of others. Responsibility allows you to engage fully with life, knowing that every experience, successful or not, contributes to your development. Responsibility is liberation because it nurtures self-respect. When you take ownership of your life, you stop acting like a victim of your circumstances. You begin to trust your ability to make choices, to adapt, and to grow. This trust builds confidence, and confidence builds resilience. You stand taller not because life has become easier, but because you have become stronger. You become someone who moves through challenges with intention rather than avoidance. This sense of agency creates an inner dignity that cannot be given or taken by anyone else. Another form of liberation comes from recognizing your responsibility toward your values. When you align your actions with what you truly believe, you experience a sense of integrity. Many people feel conflicted or unsatisfied because they live according to expectations imposed by others rather than their own principles. Taking responsibility for your choices means being honest about what matters to you and committing to live accordingly. This freedom is not rebellion, it is authenticity. It allows you to build a life that reflects your inner truth rather than external pressure. Responsibility also liberates your relationships. When you stop blaming others and start examining your role in conflicts, communication becomes clearer and more compassionate. Instead of projecting your insecurities or frustrations onto others, you identify their roots within yourself. This awareness reduces defensiveness, encourages understanding, and deepens connection. Relationships become healthier because they are based on mutual accountability rather than silent resentment or misplaced expectations. Taking responsibility liberates you from stagnation. When you believe that change is someone else's job or that life simply happens to you, you remain passive. But when you accept responsibility, you recognize that your decisions shape your future. You begin to take initiative, to set goals, to challenge yourself, and to pursue growth. This proactive approach creates momentum. It breaks the inertia that keeps you trapped in old habits or unfulfilled dreams. Responsibility becomes the engine that drives transformation. Ultimately, responsibility is liberation because it places the power of change in your hands. It does not promise an easy path, but it promises a meaningful one. Responsibility frees you from helplessness, from blame, from dependency, from denial, and from stagnation by showing you that your life moves in the direction you are willing to take ownership of. Discomfort is a teacher because it reveals truths that comfort keeps hidden. When everything feels easy and familiar, there is little reason to question your habits, beliefs, or direction. But when discomfort arises, it interrupts routine and forces you to pay attention. It points to areas where you have outgrown old patterns, where you need to set boundaries, or where unresolved emotions still shape your reactions. Discomfort does not appear to punish you, it appears to awaken you. It acts as a signal that something within you or around you requires awareness, adjustment, or growth. Many people try to avoid discomfort because it creates tension, uncertainty, or fear. But the very nature of growth is uncomfortable. Muscles strengthen through resistance, and the mind evolves through challenge. Discomfort stretches your inner capacity in the same way physical training stretches your body. Without that stretch, you remain confined to what is familiar. But with it, you expand into new levels of strength, resilience, and understanding. The discomfort you resist is often the exact experience that would elevate you if you learned from it, instead of avoiding it. Discomfort teaches you about your limits. Not the limits of what you can achieve, but the limits of what you have become accustomed to tolerating. It shows you where you stop yourself out of fear, rather than actual incapability. When you face discomfort consciously, you learn that your limits are flexible and that your potential is far greater than you previously allowed yourself to believe. Many breakthroughs in life come not from moments of confidence, but from moments when you endure discomfort long enough to reach a new level of clarity or ability. Discomfort is also a teacher of emotional intelligence. When you sit with unpleasant feelings instead of escaping them, you begin to understand their origin, their message, and their nature. You may discover that anxiety arises when you ignore your needs, or that anger points to boundaries you have failed to assert. You may realize that sadness reveals where you care deeply, and that fear signals a desire for safety or reassurance. By observing discomfort rather than suppressing it, you develop a richer understanding of your emotional world. This understanding allows you to navigate life more consciously and compassionately. Discomfort teaches resilience by showing you that you can survive difficult moments and still move forward. Every time you face discomfort and come out stronger, you build confidence in your ability to handle future challenges. This internal trust becomes a powerful resource. Resilience is not built through comfort, it is built through adversity. Each encounter with discomfort becomes a training ground for the mind, strengthening your capacity to stay grounded in situations that once felt overwhelming. Discomfort also teaches discernment. It helps you distinguish between what is harmful and what is simply unfamiliar. Many people mistake discomfort for danger and retreat prematurely, missing opportunities for growth. But when you observe discomfort with awareness, you learn to differentiate between the discomfort that signals misalignment and the discomfort that signals expansion. Misalignment feels draining, constricting, or violating. Expansion feels challenging, stretching, or intense. Understanding this difference helps you make wiser decisions, guiding you toward paths that support your evolution rather than undermine it. Discomfort teaches humility by reminding you that you do not have all the answers. When you encounter situations that push you beyond your current understanding or skill, you are reminded of the importance of learning, adapting, and seeking guidance. Humility opens the door to wisdom because it frees you from the illusion of certainty. Discomfort dissolves arrogance and invites curiosity. It teaches you to remain open, flexible, and willing to grow. Discomfort is also a teacher of patience. When you are uncomfortable, the mind often wants immediate resolution. But some forms of discomfort cannot be rushed. Grief takes time. Healing takes time. Skill development takes time. Transforming old patterns takes time. Discomfort teaches you to stay present during difficult processes without demanding instant results. This patience deepens your character and gives you the endurance to pursue long-term goals without collapsing under temporary strain. Discomfort teaches authenticity. When you feel uncomfortable in certain environments or relationships, it may be a sign that you are acting against your true nature. Instead of dismissing this feeling, you can explore what it reveals about your values, desires, or boundaries. Discomfort shines a light on the places where you have been pretending, compromising, or shrinking. It guides you back to a more genuine way of being by showing you what no longer fits. Discomfort teaches you to let go. When you cling to what is familiar, even when it is no longer right for you, discomfort grows. It arises to push you toward change, urging you to release outdated identities, habits, or attachments. Letting go often feels uncomfortable because it requires stepping into the unknown. But on the other side of that discomfort lies freedom. The very force that unsettles you is the same force that moves you forward. Discomfort, when approached with awareness, becomes one of the most effective guides in life. It challenges illusions, exposes truth, strengthens character, and opens the door to transformation by revealing what you need to face, change, or accept within yourself. Stillness reveals what noise conceals, because when the mind is constantly filled with external distractions, internal truths remain hidden beneath the surface. Noise comes in many forms: the chatter of other people's opinions, the pressure of daily responsibilities, the endless stimulation from devices, and even the internal dialogue that never seems to quiet down. In such an environment, the deeper layers of your thoughts, emotions, and intuition cannot rise to awareness. But when you create stillness, moments of silence, presence, and introspection, you give your inner world permission to speak. In that silence, things you overlooked, avoided, or misunderstood begin to take shape. Stillness allows you to hear the subtle messages of your own mind. When you slow down, you begin to recognize patterns you were too busy to notice. You catch the thoughts that drive your decisions, the assumptions that limit your growth, and the fears that influence your actions. Without stillness, these inner forces operate in the background, shaping your life without your conscious understanding. But in moments of quiet, you become aware of their presence. This awareness is clarity. It reveals the motivations behind your behavior and the needs behind your emotions, allowing you to navigate life with greater intention. Noise often makes you reactive because it overwhelms your attention. When your mind is cluttered, even small challenges feel larger than they are. Stress multiplies because there is no space between stimulus and response. Stillness, on the other hand, creates that space. In silence, you can observe your reactions before acting on them. You can see emotional waves rise and fall without being swept away. Stillness teaches you to respond rather than react, to choose rather than be driven by impulse. The quiet shows you what noise hides: your inner strength, your capacity for patience, and your ability to remain centered amid chaos. Stillness also makes it possible to listen to intuition. Intuition is often drowned out by the noise of logic, fear, and external expectations. Yet intuition, is a powerful form of inner guidance that emerges when the mind is calm. It is not dramatic or loud, it is subtle, felt more than heard. In stillness, this quiet voice becomes clearer. You begin to sense what feels right or wrong, not because someone told you, but because your deeper self knows. Noise conceals this wisdom by distracting you into looking outward for answers that can only come from within. In stillness, unresolved emotions rise to the surface. Many people fear silence because it confronts them with feelings they have been avoiding: sadness, longing, anger, confusion. But these emotions do not appear to harm you. They appear to be processed and released. Noise allows you to escape temporarily, but it does not resolve anything. In quiet moments, you can observe these emotions without judgment, understanding their roots and what they are trying to reveal. Stillness transforms emotional turbulence into insight because it provides a space where the heart can speak honestly. Stillness reveals what noise conceals by slowing the pace of life enough for you to notice what truly matters. When you are constantly busy, it becomes easy to lose sight of your values, your purpose, and your priorities. You may chase goals that do not fulfill you simply because noise pushes you forward without reflection. Stillness allows you to examine whether the direction you are moving aligns with the person you want to become. It helps you distinguish between the life others expect you to live and the life that resonates with your inner truth. In quiet moments, you reconnect with your deepest intentions. Stillness deepens awareness of the present moment. Noise pulls the mind into the past or the future, keeping you distracted by memories, worries, or predictions. But in stillness, you return to now. You notice your breath, the sensations in your body, the subtle details of your surroundings. This presence reduces anxiety because it brings your attention back to what you can control, the current moment. In that presence, life feels fuller, richer, and more meaningful. Noise conceals this richness by fragmenting your awareness. Stillness restores it. Stillness also nurtures creativity. Many insights, ideas, and solutions arise not when you force the mind to think, but when you allow it to rest. In the quiet spaces between thoughts, the mind makes connections it could not make under pressure. Artists, thinkers, and innovators often find that their greatest breakthroughs come in moments of silence, with no distractions, no rushing, no noise. Stillness reveals the creative potential that noise suppresses. Stillness teaches you to be comfortable with yourself. Noise can create the illusion that you need constant stimulation to feel okay. But in stillness, you learn to sit with your own presence, to feel at ease without external input. This comfort with solitude builds inner security. It shows you that you are enough without the constant noise of validation, entertainment, or activity. From this security grows confidence, clarity, and authenticity. Stillness reveals what noise conceals by offering you a mirror, one that reflects your inner world with precision. It shows you the parts of yourself that need attention, the strengths you have forgotten, and the truths you have ignored. Through stillness, you see more clearly, feel more deeply, and understand more authentically, allowing you to move through life with greater awareness and intention.